Welcome to FM Corner. Today, a couple of very special guests on the podcast today. We're going to talk about handyman services. And with me are a couple of folks from U.S. Exterior Maintenance and Repair, U.S. Handyman Service, and SKR Builders. And anybody else that you might have bought this morning. But other than that, Keith Moore, Lynn, Harnishfeger, friends of mine for a really long time, and the brain trust behind U.S. Exterior and Handyman Services. And they recently did an article in the Facilitator magazine for RIPA talking about handyman services. And we thought it'd be a really good idea to do a little podcast on that on FM Corner today and talk about that. How are you folks? Good?
Doing great.
Doing well, my friend. Doing well.
Good. Let's get started. Kind of one of the things that you stated in your article was the biggest challenges that facility managers face. How do you control the cost when you're servicing the restaurants? It also brings up a pretty good debate over self-performing or third-party management partners. In your discussion, is there a right way or a wrong way to do this?
I don't think there is. It really comes down to your brand. Are you a quick serve? Are you fine dining? What do you have in your restaurant specific to your brands and your needs and your budget? So you can look at it a couple different ways. You can look at it by pros, cons, how you run your programs, and trade specific things. And I know Keith has some thoughts as well based on conversations we've had with our panelists and each other.
Yeah, I think, Danny, one of the things we've seen is, there is no right or wrong way. It's how your company looks at on-demand services. And that seems to be where a lot of the self-performing happens. But what happens when your on-demand partner doesn't do something? Example, welding. If your on-demand partner doesn't do welding, what are you going to do? And I think that's where you have the third-party management systems that step in. And they can help you with that because we've got partners. We've got strategic partners that are industry experts in that trade that you can work with. And I think you see that with a lot of the third-party management companies out there that have that. We're kind of a unique hybrid here. We do self-perform, but we also do the third-party management side. And, when it comes to third-party management, I think you'll see a lot of the companies are willing to help with the specifications for the project so that you're getting the parts and pieces covered. An example, I was on a job last week. They asked me to come by and, hey, can you bid some painting on this? I show up. It's a previously welded dumpster gate that had fallen off. And the welding company did a beautiful job, except they didn't finish the painting. There was nothing addressed. So now they're going to pay, I hate to say it, but it's going to come out to be a minimum charge, the minimum trip charge to go out there for another contractor to paint. Had the specifications included painting, it could have been one and done. And I think that's where you see value in third party. But if it's an on-demand service, I think you have a lot of value there because you've got on-demand building rapport with the restaurant, the managers, the FM, all up and down the chain. So, a lot of what we came to see was there's benefits on both sides, and most use a hybrid version of that.
I think that's probably good. I can remember many times in conversations with other facility managers at restaurants, so on, it was like, I want all self-performing for everything I do. Well, okay, that sounds really good. But depending on your locations, depending on, as you mentioned, some of the services that are provided, that may not always be possible. It's a great stance, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can pull it off. Doesn't necessarily mean the quality of the work will be better either. Some cases, yes, some no. I always took the approach of, I don't care. I really don't care if you are who I made a deal with to do the business, and you decide you're not self-performing in certain markets of mine and you're going to bring a third party in or somebody to do it, I'm fine. I don't care. I'm not dealing with the third party. I'm dealing with you. And if the third party doesn't perform, I'm back to you. So it doesn't matter to me. You can do any way you choose. I'm just going to hold you accountable at the end of the day your answer can't be, well, I used a third party in their back. Well, I don't care. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably that for me was the best way to look at it. So,
Right. I felt the same way in my FM days. It's like I don't have the time to deal with this. So I need to make sure I have connected with and partnered with the right people to get things done on agreed upon pricing, scopes, KPIs, service level agreements, all those things. Because it doesn't really matter who you have at the end of the day if it's not getting done or not to budget.
sure. You're exactly
Well,
right. And go ahead, Keith.
oh no, I was just going to say in some of the smaller markets, you actually have individuals that don't understand the customer relationship software that's out there today, right? They don't have the means to be in it where, your third party industry folks, that we're in it. So we have the ability to communicate and then we have the ability to disseminate that out. And I think that you see in a lot of the smaller markets. I mean, I would call, I currently live in a CD market, right? It's way down on the list. We got a population of 10,000. But with that said, we get 10 million visitors a year that do wreak havoc on all of our facilities here in town. And, a lot of the guys in town don't have the means to communicate in that software packages that we use.
Mhm.
So you run into a lot of that too.
Sure.
And you
Exactly.
run in, pros and cons of things for both sides. You run into the fact that with your self performers, there may not be as cost effective I wouldn't say all cases, but a lot of cases because they have the overhead. They don't have the means and the ability that the third parties do. Third party management partners have built their operations teams, have the abilities to work in those programs and support your service level agreements, your KPIs. They have the training and the staff available to track and manage every aspect of a work order. They know what it means that they have to report and show the clients that things are getting done on time and to budget with photos, because everybody wants photo also, and timely response. It's a little difficult sometimes with some of the self-performing partners. They can be a little more, for lack of a better term, mom and popish, where they don't have the staff. They're just out in the field trying to get the work done. It could take a month to get verification that work was completed and to budget and to scope. And do you have to send somebody back? And it's a month later now, and you just found out that it's still a problem. So, not to say that they're all like that, and that's all aspects of self-performers, but though you take the risk on both sides with both options. Right partner for the right scope, verifying that you all agree on the same page. Danny, to what you said and your point of, hey, I'm working with you, get it done, make it happen as agreed. So,
Yeah, whatever I'm coming to you because you're the expert in this particular service that we're doing. So
mhm,
why would I not give you the leeway to pick and choose and decide how you want to do it? That's the way we
right,
should do it. I agree,
right.
100%.
I've also heard some things about, when you send a self-performing group on a route of locations to get maybe it's small projects or handyman type wish list services done, and that they've moved on. They're like 4 days down the road into the project away from where they just were. Now there's some warranty issues or things that didn't get done or people weren't happy with how it was done. How soon are they going to be able to come back? With third parties, you're most likely working with somebody who has some localized partners in place who can do the work up front, do it right, or if there's an issue, get back to it on a sooner basis. Otherwise, you may be waiting for your crews to get to the end of the line on the route to get back to any problems, at the beginning.
Kind
So
of the way that
it's a risk you
construction
take.
was, yeah, kind of the way that construction was done years ago. I remember at Ruby's, you're building a whole lot of restaurants and you have huge construction companies coming through, going all over the country, building your restaurants. And the minute they get done, they're gone.
Mhm.
And all their subs are gone because the subs are moving the same way. And what they would do is a lot of the subs and the company would partner with someone locally, quote unquote, to handle the warranty work for them. Because to your point, the plumbers have left and now we have a plumbing issue and they're 5 states away working on another building. They're not coming back for a while, but they partnered with a local company and so on. And that doesn't always work, but at least it kind of helps with your coverage and your
Mhm.
time
Yeah,
frame sometimes when that.
Right.
exactly. Exactly. And I think you see, too, it's a lot of what we're talking about is applying to the lower markets of, where they're not super big markets. You don't have the issues we're talking about necessarily in a Chicago, New York,
Sure.
Atlanta, those type of markets. And, this is a lot of time isolated when you get down to the less populated areas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Are there concerns about responsiveness, cost effectiveness, needed skill set by a self-performing partner versus a third-party management partner?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Keith was saying about a lot of the self performers aren't always up on these platforms that everybody's working in today. It's great for everyone we know at RIFMA. We're all in those systems on both sides of the fence. And you don't run into a lot of people today who aren't. It still
Mhm.
is out there. But on the self performing smaller markets, like Keith was referring to, there's a lot of people still today that you can barely get the text to check in, much less report in a timely manner and be cost effective in what they're doing in the field. Perhaps you could apply it to things like even bundled services. What are they doing when they get out there and what have they done? And you find out after they've been there that they tacked on another $500 worth of work you didn't know about, because they're not communicating and they're not doing it through those systems, not checking in, not checking out, not reporting, not providing photos. Third party management, they do it all day long, going back to the operations teams and everybody in place, the account managers and coordinators. That's what they do all day. So it's really choosing your option to risk the right partner for how you want to run, either on demand or bundling. Either way,
Sure.
if you don't have the right partner, it all comes back to efficiently managed programs from both sides, the client side and your partner side, self-performing or third party, because if you don't have that in place and really watch it, the program obviously won't be cost effective and could ultimately fail. And then you get to report to people on why your budget looks the way it does.
Sure.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
Well, and I think all of this goes back to the one thing, and it doesn't matter self-performing, third party. At the end of the day, all of this comes down to communication.
Mhm.
You've got to be communicating between you, your partner, the service partner, everybody in the chain. You brought up techs. Techs are a big issue for all of us. It's you see it in your
Sure.
company. Um, Surprisingly, we're getting a little relief here where I am. We've actually been able to hire some good techs. We've been able to hire techs that have some unique skill set that we hadn't looked for, but complement us. We just picked up a couple of guys that have welding certificates a little while ago. So we've been able to change some of that, but tech shortage across the country is an issue. And I don't see it changing anytime soon until we start looking at the blue collar industries as viable.
Sure.
And,
Absolutely.
that people are going to make a living doing this. And, I think once that mentality starts to change, that folks don't want to go into debt going into college all the time, and they can be a paid apprentice and learn a skill and not go into debt, I think we'll start seeing some change. Hopefully over the next few years, you're going to see that shift and that pendulum, really start to swing. We see it in our marketplace here, where some of the work programs are really pushing the blue collar side of the world and giving them avenues to get the training they need to be successful.
Sure. That's great. And I tie back to one piece you mentioned earlier, especially like in your market, Keith, a self-performed partner or third party management. Third party management pretty rigid. You have instructions, deals is what you do.
Yeah.
Did you go to this restaurant today and fix this plumbing repair in the bathroom? Okay, that's it. Sometimes self-performing, and especially in, as you said, CD markets, whatever that may be, not the main. It's local. The people know the people in the restaurant, so they come in and say, "I'm here to fix this leak in the bathroom." Great. Manager says, "While you're here, I need this, this, and this." Their tendency is do it. Then back to Lynn's point, you get a bill for $500 more than what you planned, but they also did three things that the manager asked them to do. The trade-off in that is third party. You go and do one thing, and why didn't you do? The manager had other things that need to be done. Why didn't you do them? Well, that's not how the system Either one, pick. So either way you go, either somebody did something they shouldn't in the eyes of someone, and that's a problem, or they didn't because it wasn't on their scope, but it needed to be done. Why didn't you? You don't win either way.
Yep.
There
And
are
we run
either
into that on the self-performing side too. Our techs walk into a restaurant for one thing, and someone's all of a sudden pointing out three more. And again, it just comes down to it's education. It's having a conversation with our techs and bringing that conversation back to us, and then going back to our client. And honestly, some of it you look at from a realistic standpoint. You've got a guy there. It's if you're having good communication with your partner that you're doing service for, and they understand that they could save $90 to $100 because we just spent $25 replacing a light bulb at the end of the day. A lot of them understand that, but those are the conversations. It goes back to that communication role that you and I were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have those conversations up front about what's acceptable to you. You know, we're in your facility. What do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
and as you go and do it.
Sure.
Okay.
It's communication on all levels. I just had a conversation the other day with a third party provider. And their comment was your first time fix for your company is not at the level that we think it should be. Okay. I proceeded to have a conversation with him. It says part of this problem is the NTEs that you are managing for the customer that you've set up. This is what it costs for our tech to leave the office in a truck and get to your front door.
Yeah.
These are the charges. Here is the NTE. You tell me. There are no parts. Right. There are no parts on his truck that he can get and put on the piece of equipment if it's broken, because that's going to be over the NTE. If he spends more than another hour on the job trying to figure out what's wrong, we can't do anything else. So I understand it, but you are managing these customers that we're doing work for. Part of your role should be to sit down and discuss with them NTEs. NTEs are set up by companies to save money. In theory, it can cost you money. It's another trip, another time frame. Mm-hmm. So you have to communicate that as well. Is I understand your point, but I couldn't go to the grocery store for $20 and buy a week's worth of groceries either.
Yep.
It's the same thing. So you got back to the point. Communication, you got to talk. You have to explain what's going on so that you can, provide the best service that you can. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're still trying to do.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about, and we talked about this a little bit, but self-performing partners who send their own crews for PM or wish list, but cannot return in a timely manner to do the work? And I think one of the things is, as we mentioned, kind of how they do it in construction, but how that's a problem as far as they're not locally based. Is that something you just discuss with the customer on the front end? So you try to make them understand?
Yes, you definitely should set up expectations up front that if you're sending your own crews, that there will be a time lapse for return, or if you set up in advance that perhaps you work with another partner locally to assist, which isn't always ideal because they're walking into somebody else's work and finger pointing could, come into play. But if they're willing to, depending upon what the scope is, what the nature of the work is, allow you to come back, and that they understand that it's going to take, let's say, a month to get from point A to point Z, and that by the time they come back to point A, it may be a couple of weeks, if that's okay. Or if they're okay with you doing it some other, way, like bringing in somebody to be able to do it. But you have to, whatever it is, you have to agree upon how it's going to work up front. Otherwise, there will be, people are going to be upset or not happy with how work is, or they may refuse to pay for something because they feel like they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. But as long as everybody agrees on what could happen and how you're going to resolve those as you go, and communicate about it, there again, that word communication, that's where it's really going to be the success of the program.
You have a situation where company A can't get back to the location, and it's reasonable enough to think that waiting 2 weeks on this particular item might not be beneficial, to where the customer could come back to you and say, okay, Lynn or Keith, I understand that company A can't get here for 2 weeks. However, the scope of this problem needs addressing prior to 2 weeks. You need to go find company B that can fix it for me, and you negotiate with company A to handle that
Exactly.
a real situation that have or can happen.
Yeah. And I think it does happen, and sometimes it's by no one else's fault. I mean, every once in a while you do get a faulty product,
Sure.
or, something like that happens. So yeah, you have to, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You've got to be able to address these things and have plan A, plan B, and on occasion plan C, that you're ready to react to.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Just be able to speak to those expectations and be upfront. As soon as you know something is wrong, tell your client before they tell you, whatever it is. Always be the one to tell them first. It may not be good news, but they will appreciate and respect you and build the trust as long as you show how you picked up the ball and carried it through.
Sure.
But they need to hear from you first.
Sure. Great points.
Whenever possible.
Actually, we got an FM that we work for, and her big thing is she needs to know before her boss knows. So she doesn't want the general manager calling their boss, who calls her boss, and she finds out that way. She wants to be the first to know, so she's doing the reverse calling, letting her boss know, okay, we ran into this. This is the issue. Here's what's happening. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation.
It's great. I had that.
It should work.
Sure. I had the same thing, Keith, with vendors. Something goes wrong on a job, I better be the first human being that you call. And not because I'm something special. That's not the point. The point is, when that manager or director or regional calls me 30 minutes from now to tell me about it, my answer is I'm already on it.
Yep.
And that is night and day better than what are you talking about?
Exactly.
And so for the very same reasons of trying to put people at calm, I'm on it. I've been working on it for the last 10 minutes. I don't have an answer. As a matter of fact, I don't have a clue what I'm going to do, but I'll figure it out. I'm already on it. So I think that's great. I think that's a great point. When it comes to PM programs, does it make sense to bundle services instead of on demand, like handyman services or whatever? What is there a preference? Is it depends? What's your thoughts?
I think most people like the idea of bundling. I don't know that everybody is on the same page with how it works all the time. So you definitely need to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that it's an efficiently managed program. As we spoke to earlier about things getting tacked on to the wish list that you didn't know about, that making sure techs in the field are communicating that, hey, restaurant manager over here is asking us to do, all these other things, which we can do. We're here, but I need approval from you to proceed. I mean, happy to do it, but need to know. Instead of, sure, we'll just take care of it. Next, $500 to $1,000 or, per location is getting tacked on, and then it becomes cost prohibitive. So as long as you can, and it is hard to do. We all think today, we've all been doing this forever. And so of our techs that they would tell you, but they don't.
Sure.
So the best you can, the best training, the best communication, making sure customer and clients are updated constantly, and efficiently with what's happening in the programs when it comes to bundling. There are things that it absolutely makes sense for on demand to be on demand and stay on demand when it's urgent. But the little things, the cosmetic things, the things that aren't going to be a safety issue for operations or your customers, then they can wait and they can be bundled. And ultimately, if it's a well-managed program, it should save you money and it should run efficiently. But that's a perfect world.
Sure.
But I do believe in bundling, definitely.
You think the same, Keith?
Yeah, I do. And, I think a lot of this comes down to the responsibility of, whether it's self-performing, third party, doesn't matter. It's the responsibility of knowing your customer. And that may mean that you're showing up on site when they're doing their walkthroughs to understand what's important to them, what they're looking for in the long term. You have some FMs, safety is foremost, cosmetic will fall second. And you need to know what that customer's really, what is, what's their corporate mentality, what's the FM's mentality, and where we fit into that picture. Sometimes the only way you do that is to walk the property with them.
And another point that becomes very critical: who controls the money?
Yeah.
Does the facility manager own the budget, or does the restaurant own the R&M budget? For conversation's sake, makes a major difference in how, to your point, things are looked at.
Exactly.
And when it is managed by the facility department, the general manager is fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it now.
Yep.
When it is the manager's budgets, wait, do item one, hold on three, move on number 5 for another month. But it depends. I mean, who's controlling the purse strings? And to use the handyman piece of that, we tried that at Ruby's years ago, and it took a lot of bumping into the wall to figure out how to get to a plan that seemed to make some sense. First of all, can't just say to the general managers, you get 500 a month, and that's what you get, and you can go figure out what you want to do. That doesn't work. They don't plan, they don't walk, as you mentioned, the store looking at all the different cosmetics. So the guy shows up and you have one item for him to do, but then you're going to call me and complain because you have to pay $500. If I don't tie the guy to some sort of program where he's going to get paid consistently X amount of money for doing work, he's not coming.
Yeah.
So we have to do that. Knowing my own customer, which are the managers, they're not going to put a list together. They're not. So they're going to have to get dinged a couple times for money with no services provided. And then they'll get it figured out. And so we had to do that. And then we stopped it at, you get $500 a month. When you get the list, when you show up, you identify 1, 2, 3, and 4 I can fix. And you stop right there and you explain with the manager. If you're going to start on 5, but you can't finish 5, don't do it. And this is the way it's going to be. And we're going to continue to come, because I'm going to try to build focus at the restaurant level. And then also so I can keep you coming to our location when something needs to be done. If I have an emergency outside of regular scope, then I just pay you regular stuff and I'll manage that. But this is a number that is going to the operational budget. And then I'm going to teach over time, or try, managers walk around. And a lot of time it's simple. Use, what would you do at home?
Yeah.
At home, if you had a plumbing problem and you were calling a plumber, you would walk around your house and go, what else do I need this guy to do while he's coming so I can bundle the services? It's just common sense.
Right.
Yep.
I've had some clients in past lives and being in the vendor side of things where there was an agreed upon scope. This is the wish list each time, but they also wanted you to be eyes, so that if you saw stuff that was outside of things and you walked away and didn't report on something, and then the restaurant put in another work order saying, hey, this needs to be taken care of, it was out of scope because it was a bigger project, a bigger thing. It was going to require a quote. They wanted you to inform them. They wanted to know that a quote was needed. They may or may not move forward with it, depending upon what it is at that time, but they wanted you to tell them. And then in some ways, if you look at it as a vendor, you're leaving money on the table if you don't do that. But at the same time, being a good partner also is, if you're into something or you see something outside of that is an issue, especially if it's safety, you need to let people know. And if it's a quoted item, and let them know you'll follow up with a separate quote to do that. And it may even involve sending a different technician for that. But you're on site, help them be their eyes and tell them what's wrong, or what, you're not just out there to generate, let me see how many tickets I can, bring up. But it truly is about being the right partner and building the trust so that they will call you for additional help as needed.
It's exactly what you want is that trust and peace so that you're building it between yourself and the vendor. If Keith called and
Mhm.
said, or you called and said, hey, Danny, the bar, I'm at this location and the bar is rotted.
Mhm.
It's got to come out. My answer is go because we have trust. I know,
Yeah.
first of all, you or Keith, that the $5,000 or $8,000 you're going to spend to redo and fix my bar is a cost that's needed.
Yep.
You're not trying to make $8,000 because you do 500,000 every year. So
Mhm.
you're not going to let $8,000 get in the way. I mean, you know what I say? You built that trust over time. I don't need pictures. Go do it.
Yeah.
Send it later, and I'll put it on the work order so that others can see it and so on. But I'm not even question go
Yeah.
because I have trust. I have trust with both of you to do that particular work, and that's a huge part with because your vendor, they're out there all the time and they see. You're not. They are.
Yep.
And they're the ones that see. I got last question. The end of the day, with the folks that you did the article with and you spoke with and so on, who gave different kind of opinions and so on, did you come up with, is there a right way or a wrong way, or it really depends on a group of factors to do
Really,
handyman services?
no one program is better than anybody else's because they all have different needs, different brand specifications, and it really comes down to based on there. And there's solid pros and cons for either option, definitely in any scenario. But there's no right way or wrong way. The wrong way really is if you don't manage it efficiently, communicate effectively, and really share back and forth what's going on in the program, what's working, what's not, whether it's on demand, self perform, third party, PM bundled, whatever. If none of those things are in place or happening, no matter what type of system, no program will be successful. So there's no right way or wrong way based on the feedback from the folks that we talk to, FM professionals. I think my personal experience, I guess I won't speak for either of you, but I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. No right way, no wrong way, but you have to do it effectively and efficiently for anything to work. I know it sounds simple. Wish it were that easy,
Sometimes
but
things are so we make them harder than they should.
Wow. I think the biggest takeaway I had, and it was a common theme among those that we talked to, number one item was trust. Number two item was communication. So if you're doing number two, number one happens. And funny enough, out of all of it, the last thing they were the most concerned about was the price because they're needing it done. They need it done. They need to they're responsible for keeping their operations going. And at the end of the day, all of them emphasized communication and trust when it came down to it. And, it's funny, we set out pros and cons, which one would be better. And it, like Lynn just said, there's not a better scenario. We're not trying to rebuild a new mousetrap. It's what mousetrap is working for you and your organization. And, that's why you have options out there. There's the way we do it. There's the way others do it. And I think that's what you have. And I think, again, like I said, the takeaway I had was trust and communication were the two big things, and the rest will follow.
Mhm.
Right. And I think on the pricing piece, I mean, I'm not in that world anymore, but from the facility manager standpoint, because of COVID, after COVID,
Yeah.
when, lots of places were shut down, lots of things happened and so on. And then from a parts equipment world, it was the Wild West. Get anything
Yeah.
you can, do the best you can, and so on. And with that, cost kind of became secondary. I don't. If the part normally costs 200, today it costs 500. I don't care.
Yep.
Get it. I gotta have it. Well, at some point there becomes a recoup of that, and that's where we kind of are now, or the last year or so, is the pressures of we got to get some of that back. Because
Yeah.
we didn't have volume, we weren't open in certain places and so on, and we paid higher fees to get things because the supply chain was so bad. Now we need to get some of that back. So there's more pressures to manage the numbers.
Yeah.
And you manage down. You don't typically manage them up. And so but again, to your point, to get to those numbers, you got to have trust and communication, and as a facility manager, you have to be upfront going, hey, sitting down with your vendors and going, this is the pressure I'm under.
Yeah.
And here's where I am. And can we figure out a way to get there? I'm not necessarily asking you drop your price. I'm asking, how do we what happens to get to these numbers?
Yeah.
Do we change the service? We do it a quarterly. Okay, let's go to 3 times a year versus 4. Does that work? Yeah, that'll work. How much does that save? Okay. How about this? I mean, just you have to communicate. And again, to the whole, everything we've talked about is trust and communication, as you just said. You do those 2 things, you communicate really well, you're going to build trust, and trust is going to give you opportunities when decisions have to be made.
Yeah.
So
because we all know that bad news does not get better with time. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Sooner or later, you gotta tell somebody. Well, folks, I certainly appreciate the time. I would encourage anybody listening who gets the Facilitator magazine, if you haven't read the article, please take a look, take a check. If you have any questions, RIFMA's coming up in February, which is right around
a few short weeks away, believe it or not.
Absolutely. Be sure and stop by Keith and Lynn's booth. It's right next to mine. And if you have questions or you have your opinions or something like that or anything, it's very helpful as far as handyman services, third party, self-performing, that whole world, which as a facility manager you deal with every day. So really good information there. Thanks to both of you guys for taking some time to kind of discuss it today. And we look forward to speaking with everybody again on the next FM Core.